What's up, everybody? It's the Nerdy Fit Chef here, and today we are going to make some awesome food. So let's get right into it. We're going to make a lasagna without any of the wheat or gluten. And replacing the pasta, we're going to have something like some zucchini. We've also got some eggplant. So that's going to replace the pasta here, and we're going to go with a classic. We're going to go with a classic tomato sauce, and this one is going to be all organic, crushed tomatoes. You can't beat it. It's like 99 cents. We could spend all day in going into the details of making your own sauce with tomatoes, organic, ripe tomatoes. And I'll probably do another video on that sometime. But for the purpose of sticking to a budget and creating some great meals for a nice cheap price, I'm gonna go with that. So we're gonna just kind of get right into this. I'm gonna start off with cutting some of these vegetables into the strips and shapes that we need them to be to get into the lasagna. And while we're doing that, before anything else, I want to get the meat sauce prepared, because what we're going to do is we're going to have this to be an organic beef meat sauce. This is where most of the flavor is going to be, and this is going to be the protein. And yeah, like I said, that beautiful flavor with a nice protein. So let's just jump right into it. We'll plop the meat right in there. Don't be afraid to use your hands, kind of spread it all out. Just gonna turn it up and let it do its thing. And then I'll add the spices and the tomato sauce and everything else that's gonna make it absolutely delicious. All right, we got this meat starting to go a little bit here, starting to brown. We're really just looking to brown all these edges and get it nice and cooked most of the way through before I start adding some of the other stuff. I like to use a iron cast pan, especially when I'm cooking meats, for several reasons, but one of the most important for me is I'm not getting added chemicals from a lot of the other pans, such as the non-stick pans and things of that nature. Ceramic is good too. I just really prefer a nice iron cast pan for a lot of my cooking of meat. And when you use an iron cast pan, it's important to use a wooden spoon. You don't want to be scraping metal on these things. Not a good thing, especially if you are using and you don't have the choice of having an iron cast pan and you only have a non-stick. Definitely don't use metal on that either. You'll start scraping that stuff right up and you'll be eating pretty much poison. So now that we got it right about here, I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. I'm going to add some ground pepper. I pretty much use ground pepper in just about everything. I mean, this shit is good. Let's see. I also like a little bit of spice, not too much, but to use some ground chipotle chilies. And if you want to know a measurement, that is about a teaspoon worth of chipotle chili pepper. Now you can use other things to spice up any kind of meat. You can use cayenne pepper, you can use crushed pepper flakes. Really, there's no end to the options that you can really use. I just prefer a nice chipotle. It has that smoked flavor. It's just another flavor that adds a little bit more depth to everything here. All right, this is looking pretty good. So right at about this point, I'm actually going to strain some of these juices here. Now, some of you might think that's blasphemy and it's delicious, but the reality is I don't need to be putting that in my body. So I'm going to get rid of it. All right, now that I've strained most of that grease, I'm gonna go right in there with the old crushed tomatoes. Give it a nice little stir. So another thing that I'd like to add here too is some good old dried herbs. So I'm gonna let this cook for a little bit longer. I'm gonna turn down the heat to about, oh, I don't know, 35%, 40% heat so that it's still bubbling a bit. Really just at a simmer. So as far as spices, I love something as simple as thyme. You can just add a little bit of thyme, something like beef, even chicken, lamb, really anything. I mean, this stuff is so versatile. It's absolutely delicious. The key though is that with this, you don't want to add dried spices, herbs to something that you're not going to cook for a long enough time. You really want to have it at least cook in there for 5 to 10 minutes, long enough so that it softens up and you're not chewing on this hard, almost plasticky dried herb. Another one that I really like to add to mix it up a bit, in this case, would be some oregano. This stuff's great too. So I mean, I've just added about, I'd say about a teaspoon of each, the thyme and the oregano. Not too much, we don't want to overpower it. We really want to just keep it balanced. At this point, I really I eyeball a lot of things. I've been doing this for so long. So in the description, I'll leave some portions and some measurements if that helps everyone get a little bit better grip on the amount you should do, because you can absolutely either add too much or sometimes too little where you don't even taste it and it's like, what's the point? All right, so now that we've got that going pretty much where I want it, we're just gonna let it simmer for the next close to 10-15 minutes while I'm cutting up the rest of the dish here, and let's get right into it. All right, so at this point we have the zucchini here, which is going to replace the noodle aspect or the lasagna aspect, which I do not need to be eating for my gut and health purposes. We don't need to be eating gluten pasta all the time. Some people don't have issues with gluten. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking off this edge and I'm gonna discard it. And this is so that, and you can do this with so many things, and this is really important so that you don't cut yourself when you're doing something like this, so that it's not gonna move everywhere. If I had this and you're trying to cut it, chances are it might be moving and you could accidentally cut yourself. So save yourself the trouble, make that little cut there so that you have kind of a base to work with. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna cut the strips here, and that's gonna be the pasta. Now, this can be done with a mandolin. This is something I don't have that I'll be investing in soon. I should have a Chinese mandolin, but I don't. So in the meantime, I'm going to use my knife. And so we might as well show you some knife skills here. And what I really want to point out, anyone that's using a knife, number one, most importantly, is you want to have your knife sharp, okay? You don't want to be using a dull knife whatsoever. This knife in particular is really just a crap knife. And if you've ever worked in a kitchen, you know this is just your average beater knife. I mean, you could probably get this for 50 bucks. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be sharp enough. So, if you need to get yourself one of these, it's just your classic sharpener, super easy to use. Maybe I'll do a tutorial on sharpening. I prefer a Japanese style chef knife. and a whetstone, but I do not have that right now. So we're gonna use what we have, and that's what this channel is a lot about, is using what we have to get the job done so that there are no excuses and we can still eat healthy and do it at a reasonable price. So when we're using the knife, I'm always using my fingers to make sure that I do not cut myself. This is the guard. And every time I use this, my fingers are gonna be a little bit inward, and this is the part right here, this knuckle is actually the part that I'm using. So even if I do go down, I'm never gonna cut myself because this part's a little bit inwards. So this is something to get used to, and definitely can be intimidating at first sight, but it's one of those things that you should just practice doing, especially with vegetables like this. This knives cut through it so perfectly and easily. When it comes to carrots and sweet potatoes, it's a little bit harder. So, and also another thing I want to point out is the grip of a knife. The grip of a knife is very important. You want to choke up on the blade, and you want to have your pointer finger holding this part, so that when you're chopping, you just have much more control. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go down, kind of just eyeballing it here, measuring, and I want to go about 1/4 of an inch and just slice right through, nice and clean. And if you can go a little smaller than 1/4 of an inch, and that's good too. But anything in that range is going to be pretty good. So I'm going to do this to one more of these, and then I'm going to go to the eggplant as well. So I'll just go ahead and speed up the process. So for the eggplants, as you can see, I've taken off the top and the bottom here. I'll do the same to this. And with eggplants, the skin can be a bit much for some people, and to be honest, I don't prefer the skin. So what I'm gonna do here is, since I don't have a good peeler, I'm going to use my knife instead, and this is just pretty easy. You're really just following, when you're looking at it, all I'm doing is I'm kind of putting a little cut in there, and then I'm following this edge down. So you can just follow it, turn it, follow it, turn it, follow it. Now that we have it peeled, what we're going to do here is just the same thing, nice and thin, using your fingers to guard, making sure that you're choked up on the blade so that you have more control. Now, if you're not comfortable getting to this end part, which can be a little bit wibble wobbly, another kind of trick you can do here at this point, and it might be a little sloppy at first, is you're just gonna get your knife in here, and you're just gonna hold your hand flat as you simply glide right through. And once you get to this point, in case you're worried about getting yourself, you can just pick it up and go right down. That way you have that, nice and simple. Here we go again.